Hello America, this is Call of Duty Goddess. Today is July the 27th, 2016. I've been working on a timeline here for this Turkish coup at Incirlik airbase, and I have found something really disturbing and I wanted to get it right out to you. I originally made a short video here and I found that it wasn't enough information after I watched it. So I took it down and I've started a new one. I think it's important for me to set a backdrop of information, so let's get started. We'll start at the beginning here. On September 22nd, 2014, the United States, along with Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates began to strike targets of the Islamic State in Syria, as well as some other places in the Middle East. So first of all, let's look at these players: Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. I'm in an article titled "What Keeps ISIS Running? The Funding and Support of a Terror Organization." The individual donors from the Persian Gulf have been funneling money into ISIS, who nowadays represent the most effective force in fighting Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria. The director of the Center for Research into the Arabic World at the University of Mainz, Günter Mayer, stated the most important source of ISIS financing to date has been support coming out of the Gulf states, primarily Saudi Arabia, but also Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. The Gulf states' motivation to fight against the regime of al-Assad has led them to financially and morally support ISIS. So, the people who support ISIS are the ones that want to unseat Bashar al-Assad. So from the previous article you can see Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, which are also heavy funders of ISIS. So the next logical question is, what exactly is the Gulf states' motivation to fight against al-Assad? Look no further than Pipelineistan. Presently, countries like Turkey and the US want to get rid of a Syrian regime that is not aligned with these nations' interests. But why is the loyalty of Syrians so important to them? The answer is oil. In 2011, a $10 billion construction deal was signed between Iraq, Iran, and Syria for a natural gas pipeline to be built by 2016. The pipeline, known as Pipelineistan, would start in Iran, cross Iraq and Syria, and possibly extend to Lebanon. Their key export target market would be Europe. With Syria immersed in a civil war, no global investor would actually gamble their own money in such a project. However, in a post-al-Assad scenario, all options are open and possible. Most of the oil will come from Iraq, but the final destinations could be Turkey or Lebanon, exporting directly to Europe. In a nutshell, it is the best interest of Turkey and Western countries to topple the Syrian regime through whatever means possible, in order to assure the flow of petrol through Syria. Notice that Turkey, although a member of NATO, was not in the original anti-ISIS coalition. They were brought in later. Now, the reason Turkey was not originally in that anti-ISIS coalition is because he has trouble of his own. Let's talk about that, and this is tantamount to what's going on at Incirlik Air Base. This is from the fall of 2015. The trouble with Turkey, Erdogan, ISIS, and the Kurds. Turkey, a key member of NATO, has so far chosen to sit out the war against ISIS. Instead, it's at war with the Kurdish militias in Syria, the only ground forces so far that have managed to take on ISIS and win. Turkey fears and loathes Kurdish independence anywhere in the world more than it fears and loathes anything else. Kurdish independence in Syria, from Ankar's point of view, could at a minimum escalate a 3 decades-long conflict and at worst threaten Turkey's territorial integrity. Kurds make up between 15 and 25% of Turkey's population, but no one knows for sure because the government outlaws ethnic classification. Most live in the southeast near Syrian and Iraqi borders. Many would like to secede and form an independent state of their own. When Mustafa Kemal Ataturk founded the modern republic in the ashes of World War I, Turkish nationalists attempted to unite everybody under a single identity for the sake of national unity and to prevent any more territorial loss. But the Kurds refused to join up because the Western powers had promised them a state of their own. To this day, they remain the largest stateless people on earth. The Ottoman Empire was loosely confederated with a space for the Kurds, but modern Turkey was founded as a strong Western-style republic with a powerful center, and the Kurds were forcibly conquered, colonized, and integrated. The government's response to Kurdish nationalism was tantamount to an attempted cultural genocide. Ethnic Kurds were forcibly relocated from the eastern parts of the country, while European Turks were moved to the Kurdish region in the furthest reaches of Anatolia. Even speaking the Kurdish language was forbidden in schools, government offices, and in public places until 1991. Simply saying "I'm a Kurd" in Kurdish was a crime, and it is still considered scandalous in official settings. In 2009, a Kurdish politician created a huge controversy by speaking just a few words in Kurdish in the nation's parliament building. Despite the fervor of this repression, Turkey's problem with the Kurdish minority is more political than ethnic. It is less an inherent dislike for Kurds that drives state repression of this minority than the state's fear for the institutional consequences and loss of centralized power. Beginning in 1984, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, initially backed by the Soviet Union, has waged an on-again, off-again guerrilla and terrorist war against the Turkish state that has killed more than 45,000 people according to government figures. So now that we have some geopolitical knowledge of Turkey, let's look into Incirlink. It's important to note that Turkey let the anti-ISIS coalition use the airbase after a soldier's death in the summer of 2015. It was after one of the Turkish soldiers were killed and two were injured in what appeared to be a cross-border clash with a terror group. Now let's get into Incirlink. I'm at an article from the Independent titled "Detainees Beaten, Tortured, and Raped After Failed Turkey Coup," Amnesty says, and that was from July the 25th, 2016. Human rights group Amnesty International says it's received credible evidence of detainees in Turkey being subjected to beatings and torture, including rape, since last week's failed coup attempt. And then another article comes out Monday the 25th from a Turkish newspaper, US Commander Campbell, the man behind the failed coup in Turkey. So according to Turkey, it's an American commander allegedly behind the coup. And moving backwards, Turkey increases pressure on US to extradite cleric accused of coup links. So that's two people that are linked to America that they are accused of plotting and carrying out this coup. And we'll go on in this article. Following a failed July 15th coup by renegade military units, Turkey has carried out a widespread crackdown on the army, police, judiciary, and educational institutions, arresting, firing, and suspending tens of thousands of people on suspicions of sympathies with Gulen. Gulen is the self-exiled cleric that lives in Pennsylvania. In a speech, Erdogan emphasized the need for cleansing of society and the existence of a virus in the military. Now, before we go any further with the timeline, we're going to have to learn a little bit about Kurdish politics. It won't be too painful, I promise. It's just a couple acronyms, but it's very important that you understand these. So let's get started on this. So we have the PKK, which is a Kurdistan Workers' Party. It's a Marxist group that fought a bloody war with Turkey for more autonomy in the Kurdish southeast from 1984 to a ceasefire last year. The YPD and YPG, the Democratic Union Party, and its armed wing, the People's Protection Units, have used the Syrian war to carve out a mini-state in 3 parts of northern Syria. It's regarded as so close to the PKK as to be almost a subordinate entity. And then you have Erdogan's AKP Justice and Development Party. Here's an article from May 27, 2016 from the Business Insider. Turkey slams unacceptable photos of U.S. troops wearing Kurdish patches while they fight ISIS. Photos of U.S. troops wearing patches from the Kurdish People's Protection Unit, known as the YPG, while fighting the Islamic State alongside the Kurds in Syria, have enraged Turkey's foreign minister, who on Friday called the photos unacceptable. It is unacceptable that an ally country is using the YPG insignia, the foreign minister said. We've reacted to it. It is impossible to accept. It is a double standard and hypocrisy. About 250 U.S. Special Operations troops were sent to northern Syria earlier this year to advise Kurdish and Arab forces battling the Islamic State there. Notice the patch says YPJ on it. YPJ is an acronym whose translation means Women's Protection Units. It is the all-female brigade of the YPG. And the YPG, according to the Military Times, is considered the U.S.'s strongest allies. Turkey has also linked the YPG to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the designated terrorist organization known as the PKK that is waging an insurgency in Turkey's southeast. Some analysts therefore speculated when the photos first emerged that the American show of solidarity with the Kurds would further inflame tensions between the U.S. and Turkey. This is from October the 28th, 2015. Headline says, Erdogan says Turkey may hit U.S.-backed Syrian Kurds to block advance. On a speech that he gave on October 17th, he said Turkey will do what is necessary to prevent U.S.-allied Syrian Kurdish rebels from declaring autonomy in the town of Tel Abad near the Turkish border, including conducting further military operations. It goes on to say, NATO member Turkey is part of a U.S.-led coalition fighting Islamic State militants in Syria, but sees advances by autonomy-seeking Kurds led by the Democratic Union Party, or PYD, as a threat to its own national security, fearing they could stoke separatism among Turkish Kurds. Turkish jets recently hit the Syrian Kurds Armed People's Protection Units, which is known as the YPG, twice after they defied Ankara and crossed west of the Euphrates River. This is a warning. Pull yourself together. If you try to do this elsewhere, Turkey doesn't need permission from anyone. We will do what is necessary, Erdogan said, signaling he could defy Washington's demand that Ankara avoid hitting Syrian Kurds and focus its military might on Islamic State targets. Erdogan, in remarks broadcast live on Turkish TV, also accused the PYD of carrying out ethnic cleansing in the area and said Western support for the Syrian Kurdish militias amounted to aiding terrorism. It is important to note that the PYD is the Democratic Union Party. The YPG is the unit that protects them. YPJ is the Women's Protection Unit. Backed by U.S.-led airstrikes, YPD fighters captured Tel Abad in June from Islamic State, and this month a local leadership council declared the town part of the system of autonomous self-governing run by the Kurds. We are determined to combat anything that threatens us along the Syrian border, inside or out, Erdogan remarked. Western allies are now arming the Kurds, he added. They don't even accept the PYD as a terrorist organization. What kind of nonsense is this, he said. The West still has the mentality of my terrorist is good, your terrorist is bad. Within Turkey, the armed forces have resumed their 30-year fight with militias of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, which wants autonomy for the Turkish Kurds and also has close links with their ethnic brethren across the border in Syria. Erdogan said 1,400 PKK militants were fighting alongside the YPG in Syria. The United States and Europe, like Turkey, classify the PKK as terrorist organization but regard the Syrian and Iraqi Kurdish groupings as valuable allies in the fight against the Islamic State and other jihadis. So with all of that being said, I hope you can understand the severity of the problem. Now that you know the geopolitical aspects of Turkey and how basically the Kurds are the enemy of the Turks. When you hear Erdogan speaking like that of the United States, 250 of our special forces have been put in with the Kurds. What do you think happened after the coup took place? When Erdogan took back control, do you think that any of these detainees that are being beaten and tortured and raped, do you think they may be our soldiers? I do. I really do. And after you understand the politics and understand the history of the Kurds versus the Turks in that country, now you understand the danger that our soldiers are in. Our soldiers have basically been put in to a position that they are helping the Turkish enemy. Imagine a terrorist organization within your country, and then soldiers come from another country and are teaming up with them. What would you expect your country to do? Our soldiers are in danger and need to be taken out of there. This cannot be taken lightly. And the nuclear weapons are a whole other aspect. But first and foremost, our soldiers need to be taken out of there, along with our nuclear weapons. So you may need to watch this video a couple of times, play it over a couple times to understand what's going on, because the parties are so confusing. But please understand, this is extremely important. Their lives are at stake right now, and I believe they are intentionally being put in that position. I am going to be doing a more detailed timeline, and when you see that, you're going to be in shock. It's going to take some time though, so give me a week or two. This is Call of Duty Goddess signing off, and as always, I've got your 6.